So, welcome to this special session of our podcast, Women Transforming the World. And today we will address very important issues on gender equality and women's empowerment. And today I have the honor to have two special guests that will talk about different issues regarding these two main themes. And it is an honor to introduce Ambassador of Germany to Azerbaiyán, Dr. Ralph Horleman, and a representative country manager from the World Bank, Stephanie Stolmeister, that she will, of course, tell us about her experience and what do we need to become an empowered woman, which brings us here. And of course, you will talk about your role as an ally for this cause. And we were discussing at the beginning of the session about these feminist foreign policies that cause a lot of interest because nobody can make a definition of the term. But in the case of Mexico, it has been, of course, two vias. The one is at international level, having more representation of female diplomats, not only embassies, but also in leadership positions and as well in multilateral fora. And within the ministry, we have some changes in which we have as well more representation, and we have more opportunities for the new female generations. And having said that, I will be very happy to start the discussion with you two. And the first part will be an introduction and a background of your experiences with these issues, because probably when we started our careers, it was not widely spoken. So please, Ambassador Horleman, if you want to start.
Thank you so much, Victoria, for having us today for this important conversation. And indeed, at the time when I joined the diplomatic service, which was in 1992, the world still looked very differently in terms of gender equality. And I would like to say from the outset that for us in Germany, gender equality does not only address the issue of treating men and women equally, but not looking at sexual orientation while talking about making a career. So when I joined in 1992, the German Foreign Service, the diplomatic service, was still heavily influenced and led by men. That has, of course, changed over the years, and especially in recent years, when my foreign minister, Annalena Baerbock, introduced a feminist foreign policy. When she came into office, we have seen another step forward in gender equality in the Foreign Office, and, if I may say so, also in the whole German federal administration, in all the ministries and the bureaucracy related to it, where the percentage of women is 55, and the percentage of women in leadership positions is now a little bit above 44%. So we have seen progress. The question is, what structures are there still in existence that prevent equal treatment? And what can we do to further support this equal treatment?
Yeah. For you, Steffi?
I thank you so much for having us. And as the ambassador said, it's a very important topic, which of course is at the core of what the World Bank Group does globally. So I'm very happy that I can support these efforts in any way I can. So I joined the World Bank Group in 1996. Also at a very different time where senior positions were primarily male in the World Bank. Was the first director in the World Bank, I think, appointed in the early 80s, but do not quote me on this. But I think it just shows that we have come a long way. Now the World Bank has 54% of its workforce are female, and of which 46% of women are of the management level, 46% are women. But I think, as the ambassador said, and generally not only about the World Bank, but women still face a lot of barriers in career movement. And I see that as well in the bank and elsewhere. And one key issue is, of course, this unconscious bias women face. Usually leadership roles are associated with traits which are typically associated with men, like being dominant, being ambitious, being strong. And when we select leaders, that plays against women, obviously. So women are clearly a disadvantage in that way. Or women are expected to be empathetic, nurturing. So if a woman is perceived not to be that, it's held against her. Equally, if men are soft or empathetic, that's held against them as well. So we have these unconscious bias, which are still, impacting us and proposing barriers to women, in not only at the World Bank, but I think in many other organizations.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I think there are still, relatively speaking, more difficulties for women to succeed within the system than for men, although, as I described before, there have been changes. Yeah. And maybe one should also not forget that in the foreign service and the diplomatic service, there are special challenges because it is, of course, not easy for a partner to join his or her spouse going abroad, not making a career or not having a similar career path because of all the disruptions of a diplomatic life, which partially at least explains why the number of leadership positions in the Federal Foreign Office in Germany by women is still standing at around 36-37% only. It has changed, but there are still challenges which are structural, which are not so much related to stereotypes of what role men or women should play or are playing in leadership positions. And we can discuss this maybe later on, why it may be also problematic that men are very often in leadership positions. But it speaks to the practical challenges also in diplomacy and in a diplomatic career.
Yeah, that is true, and as you said, it's changing, and I can say, coming from a society which for many years we had this branding of a macho society, and now we have a women head of state, which is a big change for Mexico. And I was telling you that I think Mexico was prepared to have for having a female president, which is very good. And as well within the diplomatic service, we have now many initiatives like the one here that it's part of our duties to help others. And in the case of Mexico, because of our diplomacy towards especially the consular services is being needed to orient them and to make sure that they are aware of their rights. But changing a little bit, Steffi, what can you describe as the main challenges that you face while developing your career?
Yeah, thank you. I think one key issue was, of course, and which affects many women, is kind of self-doubt. That you think, oh, you're not good enough. Women tend to have they need to be 110% sure, while men tend to just apply to jobs, no matter what. And I still see this sometimes. So overcoming that was very important, the first step. Another step was actually to speak up. While I'm a quite extrovert, I'm not shy or anything. But in meetings, I often felt, well, everything was said, so why do I need to add? And it was one particular manager who said to me, gave me the best advice ever: you need to speak up. People need to hear you. And she said, just listen to conversations, listen to what men often say, they repeat what others have said. They're not necessarily contributing new ideas. So don't be shy. And I think that was a very good advice, which helped me then to make my voice heard. Another good advice a senior female manager at the bank gave me, said, you need to say what you want, otherwise nobody knows what you want and nobody can give it to you. Not that you may get it, but you need to speak up. And I think that was very valid advice. Other than that, I had a lot of good managers who gave me good opportunities, male and female, who were also open to discuss challenges female co-workers face. And I think that openness is very important to both on the male and female manager side. And that's something I'm committed to continue as well, as I am now a manager. And and also be very open about discussing unconscious bias or speaking up in selection committees when women are often described as, oh, you may not have the gravitas or whatever. And then speaking up when we witness maybe unconscious bias happening.
Yeah, that is true. And I must say, I always say that I recognize that I had wonderful bosses, but my female ones were the ones that I owe them the most, and I was very, very lucky to have them. And going to gender equality and talking about in general, because later we will be very specific in our countries or the agencies. Gender equality, you touch a lot about gender equality and all the work that we had been done, and it wasn't easy, and still too much needs to be done. But can you elaborate a little more?
Yeah, I talked in general terms about the structural impediments to equality. Speaking about Germany, one major impediment, in my view, and not only in mine, is that, for example, there are not sufficient daycare facilities in Germany. So the first obstacle for a woman or a parent in general to have a family and pursue a career is the lack of daycare facilities, kindergarten and schools, both. So that in the past has prevented women from following a regular career path. They had to pause for 10, 15 years or only work part-time, but not pursue their career, which explains, for example, why the average salary of women in Germany is still lower than for men. And it has nothing to do with the qualification of women or men. It is just that there are too many disruptive elements in your life and in your career that prevent you from normally growing into leadership and management positions. So this is something that constantly needs to be addressed in any society. Another thing, of course, is how openly do you pursue a policy of non-discrimination? Very often it's a matter of political will to address structures or to change structures, because being conservative is relatively easier than being innovative. So in any society, there are forces that kind of are more conservative. And in the context of gender equality, you need to be innovative and break up some structures. And Steffi, you talked about all the self-confidence issues that women have, and that is, of course, very important. If I were asked for an advice in this respect, I would also advise never take no for an answer. The structures are conservative. The people grow up in structures and they inherit this conservativeness. But with this approach and these ideas, you will never be able to change. So you need specific policies of non-discrimination or positive non-discrimination. There are limits to it, because at the end of the day, what decides is not only the equality, but the quality of your work. Yeah, qualification and quality also need to be there. And again, in the case of Germany, there's not the slightest doubt that women are just as qualified as men. So this is no longer the main issue. But in the course of a policy of positive non-discrimination, at the end of the day, every woman has to prove 110% that she's better or equal. And qualification, of course, still is key in order to find broad acceptance in the more conservative parts of the society.
And this concept that you introduced, Steffi, the vicious bias concept is true, because we've seen that we are expected as a female diplomat or female international official that certain criteria that we have to fulfill. We have to behave in certain ways. And I think sometimes the main challenge is within ourselves, that we are not supposed to follow certain patterns and structures that we don't believe in. So please, can you...
And on that, just to add on that one, and women find themselves in this difficult situation where if you want to be in a leadership role, you need to fulfill, let's say, the perception that a leader needs to be, strong, dominant, as I mentioned earlier. But for women, these traits are also perceived negative. Then they're labeled, oh, you're aggressive, you're bossy, while for men, that kind of behavior is accepted. You're men, so that's okay. But also we are taking away the need actually to have also empathetic leaders. Right? So this is also the structural changes we need to see, that a good leader is not just ambitious and strong and confident, but they need to also be empathetic and nurturing. So that actually changing our perception what a good leader is in a society, we need to change. And I think that will ultimately benefit all of us. And also wanted to pick up a point the ambassador mentioned. We from the World Bank, of course, advocate that it is really smart economics to include women in all aspects of the society. And that the foundation is really a good access to quality education and professional opportunities. So I fully agree, and our research substantiates that. And that's, of course, something we from the World Bank try to do through our programs, and maybe later in the program we get to some more details on that. But I think this behavioral change of the society, but also, again, how we act and what kind of support and how we lean into the agenda is absolutely important as well.
Ironically, in Germany, school grades of girls on average are much better than of boys. So again, it's not a matter of qualification, but growing into leadership positions. Qualification, of course, is key. It cannot only be a program that favors the abolishment of unequal treatment. You also need to do the job, so to speak. And I think women are much more critically challenged on this than men, which is still something that also in the past was more easily accepted also by women, because they took it for granted that the structures are as they are. And only over at least in Germany, and I can only speak, and I only want to speak about Germany, we've seen a slight change or a good change in the right direction, and it has to continue. And one thing I found very interesting, we had a female chancellor, Angela Merkel, who at some stages was even considered to be the leader of the free world, but she was a strong leader in Germany. And she was repeatedly asked whether she considered herself to be a feminist. And she said, no, I'm a woman and I have my qualities. and I'm here in that leadership position. And I do not want to be here because I'm a feminist or other feminists supported me. I mean, it was rather the contrary in her case, but it showed that also for her it was of utmost importance to rely on her strengths and her qualities and qualification and not being a feminist.
Yeah, and as I said at the beginning, it's a term that we don't really have a specific definition, and well, so far, and probably many experts will contest that, but at least is what I've seen in our foreign ministry. And coming from a government and coming from an international organization, do you think international organizations are more advanced in these equality policies, or what do you think that we are as a government? That's something that...
I mean, the numbers she mentioned in the beginning were almost the same as in the German public administration on the federal level. So I don't think that there's an equal movement in every country in the world when it comes to gender equality. But on a macro global level, in institutions like the World Bank or United Nations, IMF, maybe, I don't know, compared to national administrations, the differences are no longer so strong. At least that's what the figures you mentioned indicated to me.
No, I agree. I think significant progress has been made. Much more needs to be made. It's not a universal. Otherwise, we would not be sitting here and discussing the topic. But I cannot compare. But I see the numbers are similar.
And it's not because you are from the same country. I must say, it's completely different.
I hope not. No, but we see this, of course. They're very qualified, competent women coming from many countries, working at these international institutions. But again, more needs to be done. More always can be done on many agendas. But that's what the World Bank and many other international institutions aim to do, to make sure that what some countries have achieved and benefited from economically will also translate to others. Also that other member countries can learn from good examples of countries, right? I mean, even Germany can learn certain things from other countries. So talking about childcare, there are clearly things one can improve. So, and other countries have achieved that already. So, and I think that's what the World Bank is about, helping, or not helping, but sharing that knowledge of good experience and hopefully feeding that into policy decisions in other countries.
And I think the changes that we've seen in many countries around the world translate into international organizations like the World Bank. And two examples of female colleagues of mine come to my mind. One was a woman who became my boss in 2001 as a head of a division. And she was very talented, but it was in the political department, which at the time was extremely conservative, and it was not considered to be completely opportune or self-understood, but it was, of course, accepted and implemented. And she became the first Director General of a department in the Foreign Ministry in 2002 or 3. And that was an exception, and all the men were saying, look at this. But it would have been unthinkable for a woman to become the Director General of the political department at the time. But it took only 2 years until another woman took the head of exactly that division I was working on before, and then became the political director, and then became the state secretary. First in the Foreign Ministry, then she changed to the Ministry of the Interior, a ministry even more conservative maybe than the Foreign Office. And it showed that over time, these changes happened. And I think they translated also into international organizations, which has working staff from all over the world, bringing with them very different attitudes and behavior when it comes to gender equality.
And I think also, again, change is always slow. We want to see it faster, but humankind,
because
it takes time.
Society's crafted in such a way that.
But also the role, and I want to appeal to every woman who is in a leadership role. Also, I was in one particular country where the female staff said it's so good to see a woman in a leadership role in a country where that is not really an option for us. So having this implicit, unintended kind of motivating factor that, oh wow, a woman can make it. Of course, I would not have made it in that particular country, but I think it's still very empowering to see that. So, and I think, having then increasingly women in these leadership roles, will help and inspire, hopefully, the next generation.
Now, what I would like to ask you, if you can share with us a personal reflection of how your career has evolved and your role models and the family, because it's also important. And we talk about family, but very seldom we say, oh, thank you for what they've done for us, because it's the support that somebody is helping us to be here as well, not only in our daily jobs, but from the outside. So please, Alfie, you want to?
Yeah, I think each and every personal situation is different, of course. In my case, my wife was also in the Foreign Service before, and she left it. Not because of a lack of career perspectives. She was more interested in an academic career. And when I joined the Foreign Service, she had to give up her academic career in Germany because, as I said before, with this rotation all around the world, it's very difficult for partners to follow their own career path. And in the past, the acceptance of men giving up their career path was very low, whereas of women it was comparatively higher, much higher. So in our case, for my wife, it was relatively easy because she could pursue her research and her academic work from almost any country in the world. She could not follow a regular career path in science or in academics in Germany, but she still could more or less do what she wanted, which made it easier. But of course, this is one of the main challenges. Today in the foreign ministry, I see more and more men following their women around the world. And it has become more, not completely normal, but more normal than in the past. And that is, of course, very important. And today we see also more and more job sharing models for women and men, and a couple in the same leadership position, including ambassador's position. We have a couple. She was the political director of the foreign ministry. She was his boss in the same department, and they are now both sharing an ambassador's job in Canada.
Okay.
50-50. We also have more same-sex couples going out into the world and sharing leadership positions or going together. So we see changes. But at the end of the day, for all these people, it's also a personal decision whether they want to make it, whether they want to follow it, because this is a path that is stony. This is not easy. And you're facing challenges. You have to prove yourselves. You are maybe critically monitored by many others. So it takes some courage, which is why I mentioned before, one of my recommendations, if asked, would be never take no for an answer. Many things are doable.
Yeah. And Steffi?
Yeah, maybe I can start with a more personal, kind of career choice reason. I mean, I come from a family where, and my mother's generation did not have the opportunity to get an education or a further education, and not because they could not have, but the stereotypes were such, well, women don't really need an education since they're not going to work. So the emphasis for us, for all of us in the family, was like, get a good education, creating this foundation to be qualified, that you have options. And initially, I thought I want to be a teacher to make that difference. And then I changed studies and went into political science and then started to work at the World Bank, which then became basically my dream job, because it gave me the opportunity to make a difference for millions of people at a global scale. So that was for me very rewarding. And talking about role models, or what drives me, that is really making a difference for not only women, but for people who may not have all the opportunities, kind of people who grew up in a country like Germany had, irrespective of background, irrespective of financial resources of your family, that you had the opportunity to go to education, to go to study in another country, which was financed by the government. So these are things I want to bring back, because I've seen the power education and a good qualification can make in a person's life, and not only for women, but of course, especially for women and girls. And so that's kind of my driver and my motivation in doing what I do. And I must say, as I said, I found my dream job at the World Bank. But there are challenges, the constant moving. Yes, each 4 years you move to a new environment. It's very exciting. But, for some families, it can be challenging. For children to change friends in schools all the time, they may not get all the best education you wish them, they could have, because in some countries there might not be certain opportunities. So a big thank you to the families, all of ours, for supporting us and making, our dream a reality.
Yeah, that's true. And they also... Probably we belong to or we started in a time that it was not usual, and that, at least in my case, I knew a few cases in which the spouse followed the wife, and that's something that we really have to praise, because it's not that easy, maybe now, as you said, and especially after all the development of technology has made very easy for a spouse to work almost everywhere if they have this career that is compatible, and that's very good. Maybe with the children it's another thing, because they have to move. And we are approaching the last part, in which we talk about personal reflections, our countries, or the institutions that we represent. But for younger generations, we already talk about that, but very specific, something that the young audiences that will listen to us, to what we say, because it comes from the heart, from our experiences. And what advice can we give them, either male or female, because at the end of the day we are all in a society, and this business of ours is very demanding in terms of personal choices and personal decisions.
Yeah, I mean, if you are in a situation of unequal treatment, man, woman, or whatever the inequality really is, I think you said it, self-confidence, of course, is important. Not behave exactly according to expectations, because then you will auto-fulfill the permanence of the structures that you want to change. So you have to speak up. Don't accept existing barriers too easily. Don't accept a no always. I mean, sometimes you should accept a no from your boss, be it a man or a woman.
Yeah, that's good.
But of course, do not accept stereotypes too easily. And then, of course, education. In many parts of the world, this is still, I think, one major obstacle. And talking about equality in international institutions and organizations, if you have a fair share of staff members from around the world, you will have a fair share of gender equality or inequality in your organization. And for them, having a female boss, for many, can be a first time in a lifetime experience, or something really that makes a difference. So seeing people giving an example is also important. So in the case of gender equality, I think the burden lies now on many women in leadership positions to give an example also. And in terms of their qualification, also an example to their male competitors, that is for sure, in order to get to a point which we haven't addressed so far, but I think is key in our profession. What kind of difference can diplomacy make? And would there be a different approach to politics and diplomacy if these inequalities didn't exist? Which, of course, is more speculative, but we may talk about this later on, going beyond this personal experience.
Yeah, I would subscribe to what you said. I just would like to add one point. I would say build networks and connections, right? Because let's say if you get a no, or if you being questioned, then maybe fact check with somebody, like, hey, the teacher told me girls cannot do physics. Is that true? Or these kind of things. So, or if you feel you're in a very male dominated environment, where we still have in certain jobs. I mean, again, that affects men and women. No? If a man wants to be a kindergarten teacher, I think you will find yourself more surrounded with female colleagues. So finding yourself networks and a support network, checking if is this a stereotype? Is this unconscious bias? And having somebody to talk to, I think that's extremely important. It does not necessarily have to be, a manager or somebody in a leadership position. It can be peers, it can be friends, family. And I think talking about that and the challenges, and I think that would be very, very helpful.
Yeah, I think something else that you would like to add before we close this session, and we will, of course, continue this conversation probably next time. And it has been a real pleasure, all your inspiring stories and histories, and of course, advice that we treasure. And for younger generations, I think also the message is, and you said it, to approach always to somebody that had already that experience, because that will help to overcome fears. So just the last two words, and we close.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, we are men or women, but we are all human beings. So treating each other with respect and being open to new ideas and views and concepts is the basis of everything. So in that sense, I understand also gender equality is something that has to be addressed also in a human way, and not only in a political, structural, organizational, or whatever way, because if you're working together in an office, leaving aside all the structures and the policies, you are still dealing from human to human. And that, I think, is also very important.
Right. Yeah.
So thank you for having me
Thank you.
in the round.
Well, thank you so much for having us. And we were all born equal at the end of the day, and I think we just need to make sure that translates beyond birth. And as I said earlier, every country is better off if we have an inclusive society. We have better economic and social outcomes if we have, and that is clearly something we stand for. And for all the listeners, follow your dream, and even if sometimes certain structures in society may prevent you or supposed to be a barrier. Don't take no for an answer. Follow your dreams, find your support network, and hopefully you will be successful.
Thank you very, very much, Ambassador Steffi. Thank you very, very much. And we continue and to our audience, wait for the next episode of this podcast. And thank you very much for listening to us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.